Good day, everyone. Welcome back to the Coaching Conversation series. I am Coach Chidinma, and today we're talking about a transition a lot of people underestimate, moving from management into coaching. On paper, it's almost like a natural move. You've led people, you've developed people, so coaching should be easy, right? That's what you think. But almost every coach who's made this jump will tell you that it required unlearning just as much as it required learning. And today we're getting into what that shift actually looks like, the habits that have to go, and what it takes to build a career, a coaching career that actually lasts.
Thank you for having me as your guest on your show.
It's a pleasure. Just before we dive into questions, I'd like you to take a moment to tell the viewers about yourself and your coaching journey.
Well, thank you so much. That's a great introduction. My name is Femi Odelusi. I'm an executive coach and a leadership coach. I happen to also be the Director of Education and Credential Standards for ICF. Actually, they've changed the name, the Nigeria chapter of ICF. It used to be called ICF Nigeria Charter Chapter, but now it's been changed. So, I'm the Director of Education and Credential Standards for the Nigeria chapter of ICF. I'm also a senior practitioner with the EMCC, which stands for European Mentoring and Coaching Council. Now, a little bit about myself. I'm a PCC level credentialed coach with the ICF. And to be quite honest with you, the credential doesn't really matter that much. It's what I bring to my clients. That's what matters most. And I'm an executive coach. I partner with leaders, and I have only one goal in mind when I partner with leaders. And that goal is to get them from where they are to where they want to be. In terms of my experience, I have got a global experience working with various organizations all over the world. Nigeria, Europe, specifically United Kingdom and Netherlands, the United States of America, and a few other countries. And then in terms of the organizations that I've worked for or partnered with, I've partnered with clients from small, medium to large organizations. And one thing that I have noticed that they all have in common is that they're all different in terms of their contexts. But I remain the same, the coach who partners with them on the journey. Well, I could go on a little bit more about my introduction, but I think that should be enough.
Certainly is, Coach Femi. Thank you so much for that. So we'll be getting right into questions. And the first question that we have for you today is, what have you had to unlearn or let go of when you were building your coaching career?
Wow, that's a great question. What I've had to unlearn when I'm building my coaching career, when I was building my coaching career. I would actually address the latter part of that question. I am still building my coaching career because it's a never-ending journey. Okay? But what I will say is that one of the biggest shifts was recognizing that what made me successful as a manager was not necessarily what will make me a successful coach. And I might want to elaborate that a little bit by sharing a perspective that I often bring into my coaching practice. And I call it the 3 partnership shifts. Now, the first shift is going from expert, where I have answers, to a thinking partner. As a manager, I was expected to know the answers to situations. But within a coaching context, I realized that I had to unlearn the knowing and embrace the idea of helping people to think. The second shift is when I had to move from providing advice to being in discovery mode. And what I mean by that is that lasting change comes from what clients discover themselves, not from what I tell them. So in that perspective, I'm there as the thinking partner to help them find answers to their own context. And the third and final shift is the move from control to trust. As a manager, I enjoyed being in control. But I moved to being a coaching. In the coaching stance, I learned that trust is the most important thing. Trust in the coaching process, trust in silence, trust in the client's capacity to think. So, the hardest part of becoming a coach was not necessarily learning new skills, it was learning to trust someone else's capacity to think for themselves.
Thank you very much for showing me. So, two things I took away. The first thing is what got you into the management did not or could not have gotten you into when you wanted to build your coaching career. And then also moving, relinquishing the control that you typically would have as a manager and then handing that over, and then really turning it into trust, right? Trusting the
Correct.
person, the being of who you are going to be coaching, right? And so
Absolutely.
in the journey of coaching, as with anything, right, it's not just enough
Yes.
to start it, it has to be sustainable. And if you were to answer the question of what does a genuinely sustainable coaching practice look like, when it comes to the day to day activities, the income, the impact, what does that look like holistically?
Wow. Coach Chidinma, thank you so much. That's another great question. And one word that I heard in what you've asked there is the single word sustainability. Now, I'm going to approach that aspect of sustainability, from three forms of what I describe as capital. Now, what do I mean by capital? And bear in mind, we're talking about sustainability here. Now, there's financial capital. A coaching practice must be commercially sustainable. Let's be realistic with ourselves. We are in it to make a living. Therefore, we need to earn financially from a sustainable coaching practice. But let's look at the other two in the three forms of capital. The second one is what I describe as emotional capital. Now, when I think about my coaching practice, one of the key things that I ensure I bring into every session is my presence, coaching presence. Coaching presence requires emotional energy. And how do I maintain that energy? How do I ensure that as I go from client to client to client, I sustain the same level of energy? There are a few things that I fall back on. The first one of them is supervision. The next one is reflection. And the final one is maintaining healthy boundaries. Now, all of these matter. I mean, those are not the exhaustive list, but those are the key ones for me. And then give me some time to talk about the third capital, which is learning capital. It's interesting that at the start, when I introduced myself, I said I'm an ICF level 2 credentialed coach. I started my coaching journey from one point. The reality is there is no finishing line. Every client, every mentor, every coaching conversation, and every assessment teaches me something new. So the coaches who last are not necessarily the ones who are most talented. They are the ones who keep renewing all three forms of capital: financial, emotional, and learning capital. I hope that answers the question for you, Coach Chidinma.
Approximately to Coach Femi, FE and L, financial, emotional, and learning. I like how a lot
Absolutely.
of things are into three forms, makes it easier for the viewers to take in. And the final question, just as we wrap this up, is what's one piece of advice you would give a coach in your first 2 weeks? Someone who is really just starting to avoid them burning out and quitting.
Great question. 2 weeks is such a short time, though. let's expand the window just a little bit more beyond, because a new coach, especially if they just credentialed, in the first 2 weeks, they're more likely to be basking in the new milestone that they've just achieved. So it will take time for that new status to be fully embraced. But let's ignore the timeline. Let's think about a new coach. What's one piece of advice I would give them? Now, I want to put myself into the picture and look back at where I am now compared to where I was. And if I could speak to my younger coaching self, this is what I will say to myself. Firstly, I will tell myself not to spend my first 2 years trying to build a coaching business. No, no, no. I'll say to myself, spend my first 2 years building myself as a coach. Credential matters. So does marketing. So do networking. All three of them takes time to build. The other thing I will do is try and tell myself that my greatest competitive advantage will always and always be the quality of thinking that my clients experience when they are with me. Therefore, how do I want to ensure that I provide top quality? I will invest myself and make sure I have a mentor coach. I will actively seek feedback. I will reflect after every coaching conversation. And final thing that I will do is I will stay curious. So my final thought to anyone who is in that position is don't build a coaching business, build a coaching practice. And that's where I'm going to stop with that question, Coach Chidinma.
Thank you so much, Coach Femi. As we bring this up to a close, in one sentence, there are a couple of leaders right now who are most likely wondering, how do I know it's time to quit corporate to begin my actual coaching business? Right? So we have a lot of people in there, oh, do I quit? Do I not quit? Can I get the best of both worlds? What would you tell if any of them were asking you this question now?
That's a great question. So my advice is this. We used the word sustainability earlier, but I'm going to substitute that word for another, which is longevity. Longevity in coaching comes from staying more committed to your client's growth rather than trying to prove your own expertise. 2 words that I'm going to use there: client focus. And that's where I'm going to drop the mic.
Thank you very much, Coach Femi, for this conversation. Thank you for just how much light that you shared. And I'm very sure that for everyone who listened to up to this point, you have gotten 3 forms of all the questions that we had asked, and this would support you in knowing how to build a sustainable coaching practice. Until next time, this was Coaching Conversations. Thank you, everyone.